Greetings and welcome to the Roast with Friends podcast. It's your boy JayMan, joined again by the homie C Rock. C Rock, you want to tell them what it is?
I thought you was gonna sing this time.
What's up?
All right, y'all. We'll do like always, doing beg for some followers, like and subscribe. Comment, tell us what we're doing good, what we can do better. But let's get it cracking.
All right. Hit us with some ratings too. We don't got that many ratings on like Spotify and Apple, so that'd be helpful too. So we did have a comment of the day that I wanted to get into. I didn't know how to look at Spotify's comments for a while, so I guess we might have some on there I haven't seen, but this one is from the homie Storm. So shout out Storm for showing us some love. His comment is in referring to, I think it was raising men in today's society. So his comment was, this one in the last episode really hit deep. Thank you for talking about topics people don't expound on. Keep it up, fellas. And it's kind of funny because I thought he was on some nigga shit. I never heard the word expound before. So I'm like, expound. I'm like, the hell is this nigga talking about? But I guess it means like to speak about, elaborate on. So shout out Storm, man. I learned another new word. Thanks, Jess, for hegemonic masculinity. Now I learned expound. So moving up with my vocabulary. Let's see. All right. So for today's episode, we're going to talk about gentle parenting. This is going to be like a follow-up to, I think, episode 3 with toxic parenting. A couple of people asked like things that they could potentially do better, or if we had any advice, stuff like that. So we wanted to follow up with that episode. And I know a lot of people are against gentle parenting. I just wanted to speak on it real quick. A lot of people don't realize gentle parenting isn't like being passive and submissive, like just doing like baby talk, talking sweet to your kids, basically letting them run all over you, do whatever they want. It's about being firm and assertive and with whatever you need them to do or stop doing, without yelling at them and without hitting them. So like redirection away from something dangerous, or taking their attention away from something to, make sure they come eat, get their diaper changed, whatever the case may be. And from there, I'll go ahead and let you take it from there, C Rock, let you know if you had any comments regarding that or anything you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, gentle parenting isn't more like you said, it's not passive. It's more about just reframing and understanding the action, like not like really demanding things from your kids as much as like teaching them to work with you with things, instead of focusing on like calling them bad. It's focusing on the actions that they're doing, like calling out the actions and stuff like that. So it really isn't just like you see some people like say like let your kids do whatever the fuck they want to do. It's just really understanding, you set boundaries and stuff like that, and you use positivity and not always negative reinforcement for things. So it's a little different than what people understand. So let's just start with that. But I think a lot of us in some way, like, me and you are both elder millennials, but I think it sort of started with our generation. Like how, like, you see a big parent like way of how like we parent versus how our parents parented us, So there's just certain things like I just don't do to my children because of it was done to me, like corporal punishment. I don't hit my children at all, and that's basically because it was done to me. Like I can look back, like I know some of y'all will say, oh well, I hear this said, especially in the Black community a lot, like, no, I thank my mom for beating me, I really needed that. It's like, no, you didn't. Like,
yeah.
I can very rarely, if at all, look back and say, you know what, I needed that ass whooping, 7-year-old me really needed the shit beat out of me right there to learn
Mhm.
that lesson. Like I didn't. But what's your
My
thoughts on
dad
football
beat the
punishment?
hell out of me with the belt when I was in kindergarten. So I was 5 years old when I was getting hit with the belt. And yeah, there's nothing that you can ever do to justify beating the hell out of a 5-year old under any circumstances. So it's just
Yeah,
not right.
it just really isn't. I couldn't even like bring myself to hit my daughter. Like I don't know. She could shoot me in the face and I probably wouldn't hit her, just to be honest. So
Hmm.
that's just me, but it's just really like more of a change in how we approach things. And who actually got me on it was not per se like she was going to gentle parent, but just like when me and you initially talked about it, was my wife. Like she started going to early childhood development classes when she was pregnant with our daughter. And like she taught me a lot of things from those classes, like how basically at different developments, how the child learns. And she would tailor, like activities for like 6-month-old Olivia, 1-year-old
Hmm.
Olivia, because she understood the difference between, you know, hey, at this stage, this child is learning these things. And like I can give you an example. She taught me about, I think they go through the stage somewhere around 6 to 9 months to where if they're in their high chair and they're sitting up and they start throwing stuff off, like you'll put it back and they throw it right back down onto the floor and they go looking there. That's called their little scientist stage. I think if I remember correctly, that's what it's called. But they just have learned the cause and effect of that. They're not trying to be an asshole and make you pick it up. It just really
Hmm.
is intriguing, like that to them that they learn that, oh hey, I can throw this down here and there's something else down there.
Yeah.
And then like if a child cries for something, like you see this a lot in the store. Like you might take something away from them and they cry and they scream. It's just like no, they're disappointed and they don't know how to regulate their emotions yet. So you
Hmm.
got to be like tolerant of them and teach them to regulate their emotions and not just beat the shit out of them because they're being loud in the store. So
Yeah.
it's just it starts right with there. That just sort of started my sort of journey to, even when this became a topic, to side with people who gentle parent because of because I understand, and I think a lot of that stuff that my wife learned, a lot of things that we did contributed to my daughter being really intelligent and being really well balanced emotionally and stuff like that. So I think
Some great points. And then like you said, like with the kid being at the store and like with a candy bar or something like that, and they don't get it and they start crying and throwing a tantrum. Sometimes misdirection can help. And like you said,
mhm,
they don't know how to regulate their emotions. For example, shameless promotion. If I put this book in your face and say, don't look at Lamar's book, and it's in your
mhm,
face, you're going to look at Lamar's book, even though I'm telling you not to.
mhm,
So
mhm,
maybe pick up a package that you're actually going to get. Like if they need diapers, pick up diapers like, hey, these are your diapers. Maybe it has patterns on it that they like, hey, these are yours, play with, it's not something they can play with, but just to make them think and look at something else can sometimes stop the tantrum. And
mhm,
then another point I wanted to get in about tantrums. I remember a while ago, like maybe 5, 10 years ago, somebody had told me that if I ever have kids, that the best thing you could ever do when your kid's throwing a tantrum is to just ignore them and show them that not getting a reaction out of you is basically how they eventually stop having tantrums, and that can work and eventually will work. The problem with that mindset, however, is after a while, subconsciously or consciously, your child is going to eventually dictate when they are feeling a certain way or they're angry or upset. They can't come to you because you're just going to ignore them. So when they're
mhm,
older, dealing with like a teacher or a bully at school, they might not even come to you. They might be dealing with a bully or teacher for
mhm,
months. And it finally comes out, something big happens at school. You're like, oh, why didn't you tell me you're dealing with this teacher, this bully or something like that? And they can't even really explain why, because when they were a child, anytime they're showing emotions, you ignored them.
mhm.
So something you can do if your kid is having a tantrum is help them regulate through that. Like no matter what it is, say it's say they like to eat with their blue their blue plate at dinner time, and the blue plates in the dishwasher or it's dirty or something, they can't use it, and like they're just screaming and yelling, I want my blue plate, and it's just an entire mess. And instead of like getting mad and arguing with them, like try to help them regulate through that, like rub their back, like, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
like you're gonna have to use the green plate this time. The blue one's dirty. You can even make a joke like, "Oh, the blue one's nasty. It smells like fart," and like some kids will laugh just because they
Mhm.
laugh at farts. So they might laugh at what you said. They might stop throwing that tantrum. But regardless if that works or not, you have to comfort them through a tantrum, and that's something that a lot of parents don't know. You have to. I like my blue plate too. I wish I had a blue plate as big as yours. Blue plates are the best, right? Like, don't say, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's just a blue plate." Like, you need to stop acting, because to them, they're a toddler. This, like, is ridiculous as it sounds to us as an adult. This might be the most serious emotional situation they've been in their entire lives. So to have their parent brush it off as if it's nothing,
Mhm.
that really fucks up their brain going forward. And
Mhm.
it's just it doesn't work in the long run. And
Mhm.
it's something that parents need to start doing. And then once you help them regulate through their emotions, the tantrums will sometimes get worse, sometimes get better, but at least you've taught them at an early age how to emotionally get to the finish line where they're over it or they distracted. Maybe you can play a game, if they like
Mhm.
playing video games or playing with their toy. Um, so if you make their mind go somewhere else, that can help them go away from that tantrum. And then also lastly, before I pass it back to C Rock, to all the mothers out there, I know a lot of moms are like, my kid is the worst with me. Like, I get the worst of it. He always gives me like the worst tantrums when he with his dad or other people. They're not really as bad. This is actually a good thing. It means they're comfortable and they feel safest with you. So all the moms out there, like, it's a good thing if your kid is always throwing tantrums around you, because something that we don't realize as adults, and with children, is they're really good at picking up on vibes. So like when you go out to like a baby shower or a party and you're like all smiley, and I like, in the back of their head, like, wait, mom doesn't always act like this. And so they start acting that way too. They're nice and bubbly, and that can be overwhelming with them. And then when they're home alone with just you and they're not feeling all that, they let out tantrums. And that's the reason why, is because they're copying what their parents are doing. There's people around, so we act, a little bit more professional, or a little bit more, friendly and stuff like that. So on that, I'll let you take it from there, C Rock.
I think you hit on something. I guess everything you said was a good point, and I think you hit on something that a lot of us tend to forget, or at least I forgot. It's like your kids aren't small adults. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Their brains are still developing. They're not. Their brains are still developing till they're 25. Like all of ours were like that. So, and that development is more drastic when they're younger. So you are teaching that. You know, you're teaching their brain how to function further at a young age, just like you said. So we got to remember that. And another thing too is your children learn by watching you. They don't learn by what you say. They learn by how you act. Just like you said, they pick up on vibes. So you know, you you have to kind of know that. And when you deal with things, especially like when you deal with things with your partner or stuff like that, like they always say, "Hey man, your kids are watching, and they're going to pick up on how you do things, and they're going to emulate that." You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to the store and you're a complete asshole to people, like you're an asshole to the cashier and shit like that, you're raising an asshole. They may not be an asshole to you because you hold the power, but they're gonna grow up and sort of be an asshole. So you got to kind of watch that. But I don't know, especially in our community, like gentle parenting gets such a bad name, like, or at least what I've seen, and you see people talk about it like on TikTok and online, and I don't get why. Like gentle, like because gentle parenting focuses more on like positive things towards your children, and I don't know why we're so against that in our community. It's like we feel like our kids are born bad or something, and we have to, literally beat them into shape.
Yeah,
And it's like I don't know where we're getting that from. Actually, I do know where we're getting that from, but I don't know. I don't want to get on that topic, but it's actually not true. They don't know any better. They're not per se born bad, but you can use this foundation as a way to teach them things like empathy and understanding. And the way you teach them is you got to be understanding to them. Just like Jay used the example of the plate. Yeah, that's a big deal to him. It may not be shit to you, but it's a big deal. He wants to use the blue plate. Show empathy
hmm,
towards his feelings about using the blue plate, and then redirect it into, hey, you're not going to get to use your blue plate. Show you understand why they're upset. Stuff like that. Then you're going to build like a solid like foundation. Like I'm looking at an article right now. It's just like, you know, teach them. It basically just says teach them respect by being respectful to them. You know,
exactly.
and they just like you said, they're gonna pick up on that. You know, and so like I said, like beating. Like I said the other day, like, and I'm gonna go right back to corporal punishment because it's such a big thing. Like people, you hit your children because it gets effect. It gets the quickest. It's the quickest way to get results. You know what I mean? I mean, that's true
Hmm.
about with anybody. Like, you start slapping around anybody, they might start doing what you're saying. But it's not the best way to do something. It just gets the quickest results. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And fuck, dude, like this one's like a hard one for me. Like, cause I really dislike it because like on some level it's cowardly. Like, I'm trying not to be judgmental towards people. I'm trying to really watch my words, but on some level, it's really cowardly because you're hitting somebody who can't hit you back because you hold all the power. Like you literally
Hmm.
rely on you for food, for clothing, for whatever they need, and they're smaller than you. You know,
Hmm. Yeah, no,
so
no need to mince your words. It is cowardly, and the problem is, it's just been passed down for so long that it's just normal these days. It's kind of funny, like just to go on a quick tangent, and I'll give it right back to you. Is like we, especially as men, we learn at a really early age not to hit women, like 2, 3 or 4 years old. If you're playing with a girl, don't hit girls. We learned that from an early age. Why? Because men are naturally stronger than women, so men shouldn't hit women, and that's fair. But then you're an adult, a 30-year-old beating on a 5-year-old, like that's contradicting already. So that already doesn't make sense. So I just wanted to bring up that quick point.
yeah, it really is a contradiction. And like I said yesterday, like I firmly believe this, and like I said, like if this don't apply, let it fly. But like I don't think a lot of y'all really hit your kids because you feel like they need it. I think you hit them because you feel like you need it. Like a lot of times you're taking out your frustration on them. And
Hmm.
that's not right because like I said, like they may not even be the source of your frustration. You know what I mean? Like one dude who I used to follow said it. He was just like, y'all will sit here and be all strict and toe your kids line and do all this and ain't nobody gonna disrespect me and blah, 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 blah. And then you go home and your boss will disrespect you all day and you won't do shit. You get pulled over by a cop and he'd fucking cuss you out and you won't do shit. Like
Hmm.
somebody at the store will fuck with you and you won't do anything because you're scared of getting your ass whooped. But then you'll punk your kid, like so. I'm just really like firmly against that shit. And I think just in our, and I'm gonna say this too, like a lot of cats will get on the internet, especially in our community, and be like, "Man, do your research." And I say this: do your research. Find me one study, one reputable study that says that beating your kids is good for them. I can sit here and tell you before you start looking, you ain't gonna find one. You'll find a
Hmm.
bunch of them that say it's not, but you ain't gonna find one that says it is. So, are you really doing it because the research backs you, or are you just doing it because you probably been taught and never thought about it. You know what I mean? So I've always thought like if I'm gonna like, especially when my first daughter was born, if I'm gonna put my hands on her, I better have like a good reason. I'm not just gonna, well, that's what somebody else did to me, like, and say some bullshit like that. So, but yeah, dude, it's all bad. People stop doing it. Stop doing it. Like flat out.
Yep. And then it's made me think of a story when I was younger, how you said that sometimes you get hit not because of something relatively that you did, is they're frustrated and you did one thing wrong, and then you get hit, and there's so much unpacked trauma our parents had that they're not dealing with, and therefore they end up taking that on their children. For example, I remember one time I must have been maybe 10 or 11, maybe. I was a little older, I remember, but because I remember it was one of the last times I ever got hit. But my room was like a huge mess. So I mean, I'll take responsibility for that. My room was a mess. I wasn't cleaning it. So my mom one day, she said, I need this room spick and span, and the dresser, the closet, this, because I used to have this bad habit of throwing stuff in the corner of the closet whenever I would clean my room. And obviously, it's kind of just throwing shit in the closet, not really cleaning. But like I felt really bad because she like brought up like how I just never cleaned it. I just throw shit in the closet. And so while she was at work that day, I actually spent the entire day cleaning my room, doing everything, organizing my video games. I cleaned the closet. I was literally cleaning my room for like 5, 6 hours. And then like right when she was about to get home, I was done. So like I was watching cartoons or whatever. And then she just came in with like just such bad energy. She just opens the door. What are you doing in here watching TV? I told you to clean your room. And like I was kind of happy because I was like, oh, I did clean my room. Like, come look. So we walk over to the room, like the whole room is spick and span. She's like looking around, looking in the closet. And then she looks back at me and she's like mad. And I'm like, what the heck? Why is she mad for? And then she turns back around. She starts looking around the room more. And then she kind of stops and then she looks down. And then she just backs and just smacks me and says, "You cleaned your room, but you didn't vacuum." And that was like such a bad lesson for me to learn, was because I literally did everything I thought of. It just didn't occur to me to vacuum. And like I remember when after she stopped hitting me, like she hit me several times, but I went to go get the vacuum. And like what I noticed is there's like 4 or 5 like things on the ground, because I think I had vacuumed like the week, like a few days earlier. And it was like one of the worst lessons I ever learned, because I really sat there and worked hard, and to best of my ability, I did everything I thought. And you used the technicality to smack me around instead of just saying, hey, you did a really good job. Just get the vacuum and finish up. It could have ended like that. But instead I got smacked around and I'm over here crying with the vacuum my room. And that's something that stuck with me my entire life. It made me really not want to deal with what's the word? And I have a really big problem with authority. Anybody trying to tell me what to do, anybody above me, you know me, because I don't listen to nobody. I kind of do my own thing. I do my own research and I make my own decisions. I don't really fall into peer pressure. And that's part of the reason why, it was because I did something for somebody. Well, I mean, obviously it's my mess, but I did it and I was like really enthusiastic and I wanted to do a good job. And the lesson I learned from that is because of a technicality and because you had a bad day or whatever the case may be, like you still decided to smack me around. And, it's something that always stuck with me.
Yeah, it's and yeah, as a child too, like I have many experiences like that to where you, like you said, you can pick up on that. You can be like, dude, like I'm not really getting hit because of per se anything I did. You're kind of taking your day out on shit like that, and
Mhm.
it's something like you say, yeah, like it's just extremely toxic, and we need to really, it really is a big problem within our community, because then you end up raising adults who not only passed it on, but they're not functional. You can tell, like by the way some of us deal with certain things, that like we are dealing with a lot of trauma. We got to stop passing that trauma on. And I just think corporal
Mhm.
punishment is a way We got to understand how important that is, like, and it really is hard to like get to people, because everybody thinks they're doing the right thing or something like that, or it's just, everybody has their views and nobody wants to like sort of come off of it. It's like a religion, In fact, they even use their religion to justify it, what I mean? So
Yeah.
it just really runs deep. So like I don't
Mhm.
really bring it up to people, but like it's just it's just really something. Like I remember one time, this didn't happen to me, but like, I remember when I was younger, I was waiting for Jackie to come over, and I was waiting in the garage, and then like my next door neighbor, or my cross street neighbor, she was walking to the mailbox to get the mail. She had her like 2-year-old child with her, and like so she was walking holding his hand, but then like she let it go, and he went to like the trash, like it was trash day, so he went to the trash can. And so he was like trying to play with the trash can. She's like, come on, come on, come on. And then like, so he's just playing with the trash can. So she walks over there and starts, and she fucking smacks him around a little bit. Like, I told you to come on. I was like, I remember thinking like, dude, he didn't really need that. Like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, he was just being a 2-year-old, dude. You could have really just, hey, told him you can't touch that. It's dirty or something like that. But it's just like, I don't know.
Mhm.
And then you see things like when you bring it up to people and it's just like, oh man, you soft, or you want to spoil these kids. And it's just like, you think like me not beating the shit out of my kid is spoiling them. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
like, I feel like some people like feel like, okay, how can I properly say this? I think they're take like, oh, I had to deal with it, so now you're gonna have to deal with it. Like they feel bad that their kids don't go through the same trauma that they went through. And it's like weird. It's
Mhm.
like it's like a weird thing. Sometimes like I think about this shit, and I feel like, damn, like sometimes I feel like black people, like we're the only group of people sometimes who don't want our kids to do better than they did. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah,
And
some parents are like that.
yeah, so I don't know, dude. Like
And
it's
then
a weird thing. But
just to like touch on something you said earlier about like treating children with respect, and that's how you get respect. Um, like a perfect example of that is like, say you have to go somewhere with your child, a grocery store, whatever the case may be, and they're sitting there like watching YouTube or watching TV. Like a lot of parents would just walk in, okay, time to go, and like just turn the TV off. And like if you think about it, that's like so disrespectful. Like, would you do that to your spouse? Like, oh, we're going to
mm,
the grocery store to like turn off whatever show they have on. Like you can say, hey, like, is this episode almost over? Or you can even walk up to your child and be like, hey, like we need to go to the store, like say bye-bye. Like if they're watching Pokemon or Sonic or something, like, okay, it's time to go. Say bye-bye to Sonic, say bye-bye to Pikachu or something like that. And maybe they'll follow your lead. Okay, bye-bye, I gotta go. And like it's like kind of silly to them. And they'll actually go, but you just walk in, turn the TV off, and now they're in a shitty mood the whole time at the grocery store having tantrums. And you're like, what's wrong with this kid? Well, they're just sitting there minding their own business, and you just walked in, like turned their TV off, like,
mm-hmm.
and that's a lot of parents don't think that that's a problem,
Mm-hmm.
that they're not
Um,
people with like feelings, and they're not
and
due respect
autonomy.
because they're children. It's like you need to
Yeah.
still respect them. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
if you gave them like a 5-10 minute warning, like, hey, we're gonna go a little bit, get ready to say bye, and then they still have the tantrum, that's another story. But if
Mm-hmm.
you just walk in, like whatever they're watching is turn that shit off, then like they have a reason to be upset with you. Like I said, you wouldn't do that to your spouse. So, doing that to a
Mm-hmm.
3-year-old that can't even regulate their emotions or explain to you why that's disrespectful, like stuff like that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work. And we need to shut some of that down.
Yeah, I think a lot of people see their kids as like minions, or
Hmm.
like I even heard one of my coworkers. Like I said, I didn't push back on it because I didn't feel like fucking arguing, but like she was talking about how her kid wanted he's like 10 years old. She was like saying how he wanted like an allowance. And she was like, I never got an allowance. I don't owe him any money. And it's just like stop framing it that way. It's just he wants some money to spend. How is that a problem? Like he can't go out and work and make it himself. Like, and
Hmm.
what do you mean he owes you? Like, I didn't get it. I pay for his food and I do all this. It's like, well, you're supposed to do that.
Yeah, you're
You
supposed to
he
do that.
didn't he didn't you decided for him to be here. He didn't get a choice in the fact of the matter. Like you can't sit here and act like, I think too many people act like their kids owe them something.
Hmm.
And and I don't. Like my daughter owes me nothing. Like I said, like I decided for her to be here, not she didn't decide the other way around. Like she didn't decide to be my daughter. I decided for her to be me and my wife decided for her to be here. So why am I gonna sit here like she owes us something? You know what I mean? And so like I just kind of brought it up, like, because her son and my daughter are the same age. And I just kind of brought up like, well, yeah, I just opened my daughter her first bank account. Like she has I think it's a little bit easier than her walking around with cash, because if she loses the bank account, we can always get the money back. And like, I can put easily money into her account whenever she asks. I could give her an allowance, or if she wants to go somewhere after school with her friends and they're going to go to the movies or something, I can easily just transfer money into her account. Like, oh yeah, here you go. And not
Hmm.
even be in the same room with her. Like I can be at work. So I'm going with my friends. I want to go with my friends to, bowling or skating or something, and could have some money, and I could just easily transfer it without, her being there. You know what I mean? So I was just like, dude, like it's okay for her to have money and to do that. But I just think the overwhelming point I want to make with that is just your kids don't owe you anything. Stop acting like they're minions who I guess you could say work for you or you control or something. They're not. They're people who you're raising, who you need to raise to be critical thinkers, analytical, respectful, empathize with people, you know, and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And
And
because they're
then,
gonna go,
or
sorry.
I was gonna say, another thing about the allowance thing, it can be a bad thing too to have an allowance. Something that is, I think, is really helpful is to teach them there's like a baseline of things they need to do around the house, whether it be like
Mm-hmm.
do the dishes, take out the trash, mow the lawn, something simple. And then you can let them know, like, hey, if you're gonna do something like outside of your normal thing, I can pay you for it, wash the cars, $10, this and that, but they should also have like a baseline, like, hey, you're living in this house, you can do or you should, or you're required to do these things. Like, it doesn't have to be nothing huge. And then also another thing that I saw online that can help your children with getting them money, and on top of that, making them smarter, helping them become smarter, is having them read books, and like doing like a book report to you, like what they learned from the book.
Mm-hmm.
And then each time they read a book, maybe give them $10 and they think they're making they're working you. They read like 10 books in a month or something like that. And that's $100. But like, I mean, that might be a little too expensive for some people, but the point is like, it's a win-win. Like
Mm-hmm.
your child is going to become so much more smarter if they're reading 5, 6 books a month compared to all the other children at their age. And the best thing about it is you're not really forcing them to do it. If they don't want to, then obviously I'll just do one book report this month, or they won't do anything, and that's fine too.
Mm-hmm.
But just something to kind of balance it and to teach them that, hard work, or working hard, and uh, like income, how to get income, like in the workplace. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a similar concept as well, and they're learning. So that's a concept that some parents can pick up.
Exactly. Not everything needs to be negative. You can positively reinforce things. Like I said before, and I always say it's the saying I'll never forget. It says, hey, ain't nobody ever been ashamed into greatness. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
you don't always got to use negative reinforcement. You know what I mean? Like for things, you can positively reinforce it. You know what I mean? So, and with me, the route I take, well, with my daughter, is just, like I said, like she's an honor student, she gets straight A's, stuff like that. It's just like if she does ask for money or something, like I don't fight it because she does what she's supposed to do and excels at it. She got skipped a grade, everything, dude. So she excels at it. So why am I gonna fight
Hmm.
it? You know what I mean? Like it's just like, oh, because she might ask, like I think she asked for some skates or something. Of course, we got her the skates. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna why fight it? You know what I mean? And so
Hmm.
it's just it just is what it is. But a minute ago I brought up about parents not wanting to do their kids to do better than them. But it's kind of a segue into the other topic we want to talk about. But did you see the video what Steve Harvey said?
No, I don't think so.
But I'll send it to you so you can put it so we can edit it in here. But basically Steve Harvey, I forgot who he was talking. I forget the name of this pastor, but he was on this pastor's show, and he was talking about how he was like, he was like, yeah, he's like, I tell my kid, he was like basically saying, I tell my kids when when we die, y'all gonna be crying, but because he's like, me and your mama spending all my money. Like I'm going on vacation, I'm doing all this, and I might leave 5 to 10%, but I'm spending all my money on me and stuff like that. And then they were just like, he was just like, well, it's not just what you leave your kids, it's what you teach your kids and stuff like that. So, I was seeing a lot of people, especially people of our in our community agree with this. And I guess, I want to ask you, like, hey, how do you feel about leaving your kids inheritance? Is that something we should do? Or do you feel like that's important?
I haven't really thought about that. I think I do agree that it's more important what you teach them so they can do and provide for themselves. That's the most important part. Unfortunately, a lot of people our age and 10, 20, 30 years older are living paycheck to paycheck and they don't have the ability to leave anything for their children. So I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't say we should like advocate that it's so important to do that, but um also having the mindset that's like fuck them kids and I'm spending all my money is it's kind of messed up
Mm-hmm.
too. I mean, it depends on how much he has. Like I don't know how much
Steve
he's
Harvey is
spending.
worth Steve Harvey is worth $200 million.
Oh, okay. In his case, yeah, yeah, I would say that's a little selfish if you just like blowing money just to blow it. I'm here right now, I'm spending all this when if anything, put some investments to the side,
He,
put something
I,
that can earn them residual income.
I did the math because I'm like, okay, he's 66 years old. Realistically, he has about 10 years left. Let's just say he'll live because he's rich. The average male lives to about 70. Since he's rich, I say he can make it to probably 80, maybe further. But realistically, let's just split the baby, say somewhere around 76. So I was like, so let's say like he did live to 76. For him to blow, if he liquidated all his assets and had the $2 million, he would have to blow $50,000 a day to blow all that money, to blow
Hmm.
85% of that money in 10 years. And like I was speaking with my wife about it because I debated this with her first. But like I was like, he's like, you could spend that type of money a day, but I'm like, you'd have to go out your way to spend that type of money a day, like
Hmm.
50 fucking $1,000 a day. Like there's Amazon warehouses that operate on less than that. You know what I mean? Like you would have to literally just be doing that to spite them. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, fuck y'all niggas. I'm just gonna buy I'm gonna buy a brand new BMW every day and burn it and then go buy another one just to spite you niggas, like. So I was like, yeah, in his case, it's a little disgusting. You know, I can understand if he said I'm gonna spend most of it, like 60% or something, but in his case, but yeah, bringing it back to like you said, with the normal people, a lot of us are living paycheck to paycheck, but there is things we can do. A little bit of a lesson, like the no the number one way that people used to pass wealth down to their children is through property. Like buy a house. Your grandparents buy a house, and then when they pass away, your parents get it, and hopefully they have already bought a house, and then they pay off their house and pass it to you, right? But a lot of people can't,
Hmm.
especially in a lot of areas, can't get a house no more. So another way you can do that, and it's actually probably a little bit cheaper, and I think a lot of us could afford it, is life insurance. is you get the biggest life insurance plan you can afford, especially if you're relatively healthy. It's going to be cheap that you can afford. So when you pass away, and you put a little bit, of course, you're going to give some to your spouse or whatever, the majority of it, but you pass some down to your kids. Like, you set, like I have it separated out to where, 25% of mine goes to my daughter and then 75% goes to my wife. So she gets at least something when she turns 18. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
And,
important.
and so that's actually another way that you can pass it down to you, and it's not to your children, and it's not that that expensive. But you are right, it's all about what you teach them too, um is actually more important, and the time you spend with them and stuff like that. That's what they're going to ultimately remember. But I think we in our community, we blow that off, like the financial aspect. Like I was saying, we should want our kids to do better than we did
Hmm.
and have more opportunities than we did. So I think, like, we struggle sometimes and we feel like, oh, well, nobody helped me, so why should I help you? But it's like, wouldn't you have liked somebody to help you though? You know what I mean? Like, it's 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 like so weird. Like, I got a personal story about that. Like, my dad, my dad basically was just like, yeah, he ain't leaving us nothing. And then him and my uncles don't get along right now because one of my uncles, when my grandpa passed away, stole the inheritance from the rest of the kids, from the rest of the brothers and
Hmm.
sisters. And I'm just like, Dad, you with a straight face is just gonna look me in the eye and say, I should leave you nothing. I gotta find my own way. But then now you mad at my uncle for stealing your inheritance. Like, you don't see the contradiction in this shit.
Yeah.
Like, you want me to care, and like, because part of him is just like, I don't care, like,
Hmm.
but I was like, damn, you baby boomers really are like the worst generation. Like, the people, y'all the most selfish people. Like,
Yeah. You ain't
but
lying.
but I think, like, that is a big deal. Like, it spits onto it comes into a lot of things to where, like, my politics and all that, you know what I mean, about what I believe about why, you know I think those things are important, you know what I mean? Because it's just like, a lot of the trauma our parents did get came from being poor, because being poor is traumatic, you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
we're passing on trauma to our kids by just passing on poverty, you know what I mean? And so, you know, a lot of the stuff that a lot of us go to, if you look at, like, kids who are Black who grew up middle class, it's funny, they don't have a lot of the same trauma that we had. You know what I mean? You know, generally speaking, it's not always true, but you know what I mean. But a lot of it is due to poverty. So I just think, like, it's really important, and I really wish we focused a little bit more on that, because it's just like, yeah, like, that's the only reason I bought a house, so I can have something to pass on to my kids. Like, it makes no difference if I rent or not to me. You know what I mean? Like, how am I gonna? I'm not taking part in the wealth. It's something that they're gonna take part in. Like, so that's the
Yeah, and
only
having
reason.
kids with like the mindset to not want to help them, like, is kind of like, I really don't understand the point in having kids if you don't want to help them. At the very least, he can set it up to where any type of like trade school degree they want to get, like, he'll pay for that, kind of teaching them like, hey,
Mhm,
I'm giving you all the tools to go do whatever, live your dream and make your own money. Like, I can
mhm.
understand that too, because
Yeah.
that's something that a lot of people will never have. Like, I can't just go to school and get a
Mhm,
degree for whatever I want to be in. There's so many steps I would need to take. And
mhm,
then something I wanted to touch on really quickly, going back to the parenting thing, is I said this on a previous episode. I think it was pretty sure that the toxic parenting thing, toxic parenting episode, but with kids, especially toddlers, a lot of times they only understand like the last two words you're saying. So like, say your child is picking up like a big ass Tonka truck, right? They're about to smack their brother or sister in the head with it. instead of saying stuff like "don't hit your sister" and then they do it, you say like words like "no," "stop," "play nice," "sit down," "hey," yell "hey." So you want to
Mm,
do stuff like that instead of saying "don't hit your sister," "don't throw that," because they don't really understand
mm,
contractions like "do not" yet. So in their head, they think you're saying hit your sister in the head with this big ass truck, and then they hit her, and then
mm,
you come over and stop them, and then they're kind of confused because I thought you said hit them, like they don't really understand yet. Like in the back of their head, yeah, they probably know it's wrong, but at the point in time, it sounds fun.
mhm,
um, and then something that you can do is like grab the toy truck, put it back on the ground, grab their little hand and say like play nice and roll it around on the ground and teach, show them an example of how to play with it. And if they end up throwing it again, at that point, just take it away, put it somewhere out of reach, like a high cabinet on top of the fridge, somewhere where they can see it, but they can't get to it, and leave it up there for 2 days, 3 days. Like make sure it's a reminder that they keep seeing and asking for their truck up there. Like, no, you threw it last time. You remember you threw it at your sister? And they might say yes or no or whatever, but you have to teach them that there's consequences to their decisions. And
mhm,
like I was saying, they can't articulate like, "Oh, mom, you said don't throw it at your sister. That sounds like throw it to your sister to me. That's why I threw it." Like a 3-year-old isn't going to say that to you. They can't articulate what they're thinking in that moment. So that's why
mhm,
you have to set boundaries with your children and make sure they understand the consequences. And then another example is when say your child is at the park and they're trying to go down the slide, and another kid's going down the slide, and they smack the kid and go down the slide, and then the other kid comes down the slide like crying. And what you should do in that situation is first create a barrier between your child and that other kid. Walk up to the child and ignore your kid for a little bit, like put your arm out, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Uh, little Tommy shouldn't have done that to you. Are you okay?" Wait for them to respond, like, "I'm sorry, they should not have hit you. I'm not gonna let little Tommy play on the slide since he's playing like that." And let little Tommy know, "Hey, we're gonna go play on the swings now because you're not playing nice." And maybe at that point he'll apologize and maybe it'll all be squashed. But some kids, the main thing you want to do with children in a situation is don't force them to say sorry. Never force your children to say sorry. Explain to them, set a boundary. "Hey, you're not playing on this slide until you say sorry. So you go play on the swings for a little bit," but never get your kid to say, "Hey, say sorry." You just hit them and they're like, "Sorry." Like
mhm,
you never want that. You want them to be really empathetic. Like, "Hey, I shouldn't hit this person." If they just say sorry and don't mean it and they just go play on a slide again, they're probably going to smack that kid again. Or if not, they're going to smack somebody else. So take
mhm,
them away from what they want to do. Take them away from that slide. And maybe they will never say sorry that day. Maybe they just play on the swing for the rest of the day. But the next time, they're going to be like, "Man, I really like playing on the slide. I need to play nice with these other kids." So
mhm,
don't ever make your kids do that unapologetic sorry. Like they need to
mhm,
really genuinely be sorry when they say it. And the best way, like as C Rock alluded to earlier, is learning by example. That's why you walk in between, set that barrier, put your arm out, like not to push your kid away or nothing like that. Just a mental barrier, like, "Hey, I'm protecting this other child from you right now because you just smacked them upside the head." So
mhm,
and then when you apologize to them, "I'm so sorry. Little Tommy should not have hit you like that. Are you okay?" You're showing them an example of how to be empathetic and how to be sorry. And once you set that boundary, "Hey, you're not playing on the slide unless you apologize." Chances are they're going to eventually apologize. But like I said earlier, they might be a little shit that day. "I'm not apologizing. I'll just play on the swing." Perfectly fine. You set that boundary. As long as they respect that boundary and don't try to go back over to the slide, they still learn something, that there's
mhm,
consequences to their actions.
mhm. Exactly. And those consequences, teaching somebody there's consequences to their action can be positive too. We got to take, like, just like you used earlier about how, hey, if they do something, you can reward them for doing something. There should be
Mhm.
positive, you know, it's the yin and the yang. I just think people need to understand that, yeah, you are raising human beings come out the womb not fully developed. You know what I mean? Like we come out and we're still growing. You know, like even our brain, not just our bodies. Your children aren't just little people. They're not little grown ass men that are just going to get bigger. You know, or grown ass women. You got to really understand that you are teaching them through many steps of their lives. And a lot of that foundation is important, but it's important emotionally too. You know what I mean? We take too much of that for granted. You know what I mean? That's why I wanted to bring up the inheritance thing, because it's like you don't always you got to look out for them for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? It's like it could like it comes into effect with anything. You got to leave them something because you're setting them. You like, yeah, I can teach you how to run a business, but the reality is we live in a capitalistic society, and you need capital to run a business. Period. You know, so without having some sort of inheritance, like think about, you ever heard of Master P?
Of course, we sent her to Master P.
Yeah, he started No Limit Records with a life insurance policy. The money he got from a life insurance policy from his grandpa, with 10 grand.
No, I didn't know that. I knew he ran it himself, and he
Yeah,
saved Snoop, so I knew he was like a
yeah,
boss, but I didn't know
yeah,
that part.
yeah. It's like, imagine if he had never got that 10 grand, he might not have got off his feet. You know what I mean? Like, 10 grand in the 80s, in the 90s was a lot. You know what I mean? So it's just like, imagine without having that startup capital. You know what I mean? So it goes well into adulthood. And I mean, like I said, that's just my beliefs. That's why I wanted to bring that up. You know, because going back to Steve Harvey, it wasn't, my problem is I'm never going to say anybody should do anything with their money. But my problem was just the way he delivered it was just this, just like you said, it came off like, man, fuck them niggas, fuck them kids, you know what I mean? And I think we shouldn't have that aspect, you know what I mean? Like, we should be thinking about what, especially in my 20s, what I needed and what I could have used, and maybe how I can provide some of that, not all of it, but some of that to my children. You know what I mean? And I think we need to go that extra step because, like I said, gentle parenting don't just start when you're dealing with toddlers. That's the most important times, but it's also about, you're still raising people when they're adults or teenagers. They're all of that. You know what I mean? So that's why I want to bring up both of those topics. You know what I mean? Because I feel they were both examples of things that we as a community can do better. We as people in our we as people just in general can do better. We can do better with raising our kids. You know what I mean? Not to say that anybody's a bad parent, but you can always get better. Mamba mentality.
Exactly.
You're the one who
Yeah.
you're the one who taught me that. So what Kobe Bryant said. You know what I mean? Like, hey, oh, even when you think you're doing good, look at what you can do better. And I think we can all do better as parents. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And we can do better as a community. You know what I mean? So it's just, again, I hope somebody learned something. You know what I mean? Because
oh yeah, real quick, Chris. I'm not sure if I've ever told you this. Hopefully, I didn't. But do you know what the most important 30 minutes of a toddler and a child's life is? Like around ages like 5 to like 18 or whatever, around there. The first 10 minutes when they wake up in the morning, the first 10 minutes when they come home from school, and the last 10 minutes before they go to bed. So something that can really have an impact on your child's life is start getting them up just a little bit earlier than they normally do, and like do some type of activity with them, whether it's just like reading a book, playing their favorite video game with them, just something that if it's possible, of course, everyone has their own lives, their own jobs, and some parents aren't able to. But if you can, try to set aside those 10 minutes. Like, if your kid likes Smash Bros., play a couple rounds of Smash Brothers with him in the morning before school, after school, before bed, and that will have a lasting impact on their lives. They might be having, a midlife crisis, 30, 40 years old, think back to their child, like, man, I really miss playing Smash Brothers with my dad every morning before school. Like, man, like that's something I want to do with my kids. So just mentally and the way the brain works. Because if you think about it, the first thing in the morning I get to, play video games for 10 minutes with my dad, get home from school, watch this TV show, anime with my dad or with my mom before bed. And it's almost like the first thing they think of in the morning is I get to do this fun activity. It makes the entire day better. And then before going to bed at night, they get this fun activity, and they're more likely to sleep better at night as well, and like sleep throughout the night. So I know a lot of people don't know this, so I'm glad you did. And now that maybe
Yeah,
something that can help you with your children.
exactly. Yeah, I didn't know that. So like you said, like I got to take my own advice, to be willing to learn, willing to adjust, willing to grow.
Hmm.
You
Oh, and
know,
then my bad. There's one more point I wanted to bring up. Sorry to cut you off.
no, no, that's good.
Um, there's something that a lot of parents need to change doing is taking everything personal. You have to understand that your children are their own little people with their own emotions, anger, fear, shame. Unfortunately, depression is possible even in kids. We need to stop taking everything so personal. For example, I don't think C Rock is like this at all, but just using him as an example. So he's picking up his daughter from work. She's a great kid, really smart, really respectful. But let's say for whatever reason this day she gets into the car and C Rock's like, "Hey, baby girl, how was your day today?" And she's just like, "I don't want to talk about it," and she's just kind of like looking off to the side, and like. Maybe C Rock isn't really in the right mindset to hear that right now. He really wants to, hasn't picked her from school in a while. And he's just like, well, you can't just tell me I never picked you up from school. You can't just tell me how your day went. And like, she kind of snaps, "I don't want to talk about it, Dad." And then C Rock may take that personal, and she could have just had the worst day of her life at school. Something terrible could have happened. She doesn't feel comfortable talking about it. And in that case, a lot of parents are going to take that as disrespect. And technically, yes, it is disrespectful to speak to their parent that way, but you need to dig deeper to the root of the problem. If you know you have a good kid and they don't normally snap at you, there's something going on, and you need to get to the bottom of it instead of just, "Oh, you're being disrespectful. You come home, you going straight to your room." That's going to make it even worse. First of all, you need to take your kid away from the school, be like, "Okay, you don't want to talk about it? That's perfectly fine. I'm not going to force you to talk about your day." In that situation, you need to show empathy.
Mhm.
So if you have the money, you have the time, maybe she has a favorite ice cream she likes, stop at Baskin Robbins, something. Actually get out the car and, get her in the mindset like she's at school. Get her in the mindset, okay, now I'm somewhere else. I'm away from the school. Don't even bring it up. Just eat your ice cream, stay quiet. And maybe towards the end, when you see she's only got like a couple bites left, you're like, "Hey, like, did I do something?" Like you can like, or we talked about redirect earlier. You can redirect even though they're older now. You can redirect like, "Hey, like, did I do something in the morning? Like, did I do
Mhm.
something last night that hurt your feelings? Like, if do it, like, I want to apologize. Are you angry with me?" And at this point, you took them away from the situation. You're not yelling at them. You're not telling them to be respectful. That lesson can come afterwards, right? So
Mhm.
now they might be more open to tell you what's going on. "Oh my God, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I turned in my report. I had the wrong day. I thought it was due tomorrow. It was due today. I didn't finish it. I was trying to finish it on my break. I think I'm gonna get a D on it." And then now you get to the root of why she snapped at you. Then you can
Mhm.
take that in, give her solutions, say, "Hey, I'll say it's my fault. I'll talk to the teacher, see if we can get it extended, just finish it tonight, take it from there. But now here's the part where you teach the respect. But I just want to let you know, when you have a bad day, just let me know, like, 'Hey, Dad, I had a bad day. I don't really want to talk right now. Is that okay?'" And you set that boundary. You teach them how to respectfully tell you they don't want to talk instead of snapping at you. Now you've taught them empathy. I mean, yeah, you have. I didn't mean to say that, but you've showed them empathy and you've taught them empathy. And most importantly, you've taught them how to respect you when they're in a bad mood. A lot of us, even myself, I had to learn to speak to people respectfully when I'm angry with them.
Mhm.
And it's really, really hard. I'm still working on that to this day. So, how do you expect a 10 or 11-year-old when they're going through
Mhm.
all those emotions? They might be going through puberty and their hormones are all over the place. and their mindset at that point is might be the age where they start lashing out towards their parents. So if your kid is, now this is another story. If your kid is always being disrespectful, always snapping at you, that's something that should have been nipped in the bud a long time ago. I'm talking about the exception to the rule when they're normally respectful. You need to show empathy and find out why they're lashing out, why they're snapping at people. If they're all already doing this all the time, like that's going to have to be another episode because that's a lot more to unpack. And with that, I'll pass it back to C Rock, and we're going to start wrapping this episode up in a little bit.
Man, you hit on so much right there. Yeah. It just goes right back to, there was a saying I heard, and it said, your children always do as you do, not as you say, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I said earlier, like, hey, if you're teaching, your actions are teaching them to be an asshole and you just don't know it. You just think it's okay because they're not doing it to you. But that's exactly, you used a good example of, yeah, you taught them empathy by showing them empathy. You taught them respect by showing them respect. You taught them a lot of different things, but these things are impossible unless you've dealt with your shit, and if nobody takes anything from this, it's just, whatever trauma you might have, you got to deal with it before having kids, like it might not be your fault that you are the way you are, but it's your
But it's your
responsibility
responsibility, you know?
to fix it. And y'all got to do that before you have kids, because it ain't their fault that you had the trauma to put onto you. You know what I mean? It ain't my daughter's fault that I went through what I went through. You know what I mean? So why am I going to take it out on her? You know what I mean? So you have to have dealt with your shit and just don't be afraid of therapy. Don't be afraid to grow. Growth, anything, intelligence. And I say this, like, there's a lot of people, like, there's a lot of friends I have, and they have the ability to be intelligent, but they're not per se what I would say intelligent. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have good listening skills. They don't have good, analytical skills. They're overly opinionated. I was overly opinionated. But being anything intelligent, being good at, like, I brought up Mamba mentality. It's all a mind frame. Kobe Bryant had the talent, but he would have never grown into the player he was if he wouldn't have grown. You remember in his early when Phil Jackson left the first time? He was basically like, this dude is uncoachable. And Kobe had to learn, like, hey man, maybe, I gotta let this dude coach, like I have to change. You know what I mean? I have to grow. And we all have to do that. We all have to look at what we're doing. And it starts with us, like, and I'm gonna end with this one last story. Like, I always say, like, to strangers, to anybody, like, I've been doing it for a while. You probably see me do it. Like, I say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, to them. And people ask me, like, why do you say that? I was like, hey, dude, I started saying that with my daughter before my daughter was born. And I was like, because I didn't want to raise a little asshole, but if I was an asshole, how could I, so I want to teach you, this is how you speak to people. You say, hey, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, like, and I led by example on doing that. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you show people respect, as long as they're being respectful to you, you know what I mean? So, because like I said, your children are always going to do as you do, not as you say. And so, I'm in on that. Like, it's all a mind frame. You know what I mean? It's all a skill. Parenting is a skill, something that, you're going to teach, because when you have children and then, I do this correctly with my children, they're going to take what I taught them and do the same thing with their children, and so on and so forth. Just like trauma is passed on, good parenting is passed on too. So, like I said, if you learn nothing from that, my final suggestions, like my wife did it. If you guys got the time and the money, is still relatively cheap. I know in community colleges, they're everywhere here in California. You could take some early childhood development classes, even if you're not in a relationship right now, but you want to have some children and be in a relationship later. Take some early childhood development classes at, like, your junior college. Read some books on this topic by, like, reputable authors, stuff like that. Prepare yourself before you have the kids. You know what I mean? Because you'll learn a lot, and it will really open your eyes, and a lot of it does really work, and just like I said, always grow, always get better. That's all we can do on this planet. We can make it we want the planet to be better. We want everybody. We want the world to be better, but it starts with you, homie. Starts with me.
Yep. Starts
So,
with how you raise the children. Some
mhm.
great points. And then I'll say one more thing before wrapping this episode up. This isn't really about gentle parenting. This is just like more in general. Shout out to all the middle children, man. We don't give the middle children enough recognition, attention. I don't know if a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of middle children are the ones that end up getting into more problems, getting into more trouble when they get older because they receive a lack of attention from their parents. So, half the time the oldest is kind of like half a parent, half a sibling. And then the baby kind of gets away with just about everything. And then the middle child kind of gets forgotten. It's like they're literally in the middle. They get a little bit of seniority over the smallest child, but they don't get any type of responsibility, respect above that. So shout out the middle children, especially the middle children who was also the first girl in the family. They have it the worst. So shout out all the women who are the oldest woman and the middle child, because you get so much of the responsibility that the older male should have gotten, but they just get a pass in some families for whatever reason. And you also, in a lot of cases, get ignored. So it's pretty shitty experience, I would assume, just from the articles I've read about it. But on that note, sorry, a little rant there.
I'm a middle child. I get
it.
I'm a middle child. I get it. I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, they get into the most trouble as adults. Sometimes they're more immature because they don't get much responsibility. And so just some little things you can do is you're leaving, date night with your spouse. Every once in a while, let them, hey, middle child, hey, C Rock, you're in charge this time. You make sure the house is clean, everything when you get back.
Yeah.
I'm counting on you. Just little things like that. And if you have the time, if you get PTO at work, something that you can also do with your children is try to set it up for 3 days out of the year and let them decide, like, hey, you get 1 day a year where it's just me, my spouse, and you, the child. Get 1 day where it's just the dad and the middle child, 1 day where it's mom and the middle child. So they get 3 days, they can kind of do what they want. And I'm not saying just the middle child, if you have the time, of course, do it with all your children, but just try to take some extra time out for all the middle children out there. Want to give them some support and love since their parents naturally don't do it. Not trying to call anybody out. It's just the reality of the situation. It's just natural to put all the responsibility on the oldest and almost zero responsibility, and the youngest can get away with just about anything. So just try to treat everything, all the kids a little bit more fairly, give them all responsibility, hold them all accountable, and they'll turn out a lot better instead of being the middle child statistic. So
for sure.
My bad, little tangent there.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good.
So on that note, we'll go ahead and start wrapping this episode up. It's kind of weird. We've had a long, long tangent of episodes with a guest on. So I'm like, it's been part of me this whole episode. I'm like, damn, is somebody else gonna? Oh, damn, it's just me and C Rock going back and forth. So we had to do a little bit more talking this time. But shout out all the guests we had on: Rob, Lamar. His name's Trey.
Yeah, Trey.
Shout out Trey, Shireen. Shout out Jess, Elise, Charming Elise. Did I miss one? I think that's it, right?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Oh, Bush, Bushy Boo.
Oh, we forgot about Bush. I'm sorry, Bush.
Sorry about that. We just did that episode last week too. But I think that's everybody. All right, so thanks for tuning in to the Roast with Friends podcast. And on that note, we gone.
Chop the top on this bitch. We out of here.